Thank you to our sponsors.
Hi, Chris Mc Loone here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Welcome to this episode of our podcast. Today, we're going to be doing a deeper dive into a stock rig program. Today's stock rig program is the HME stock rig program. With me today is Dale Trettel. He is the Chief Apparatus Officer for Dingus Fire, and Jeff Rhein, who is the Director of Sales for HME. Guys, thank you very much for sitting down with me today. You know, there seems to be no matter where you go, there are different approaches to stock rig programs, and we're going to talk about yours today. But I think it is important that we do dig down into some of these things, because there really are some different approaches, some different viewpoints to that type of program that everybody needs to be aware of. So I guess Jeff, just to start us off, if I'm a chief and I'm in the market for a new pumper, let's say, and I'm looking at all of my options, why do I want to buy an HME stock rig?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having us. It's nice to meet you. I was hoping to catch you at FDIC, but you were really busy, and we had a really good show too, so it never worked out. And also, thank you for your service. I was looking at your bio, and you've got two of the most thankless jobs, I think, in the industry: safety officer and recruitment and retention. So I wanted to say you're a glutton for punishment. But thank you for your service. I think overall, I appreciate the topic. It's obviously one that we're passionate about at HME. I think what we tried and what we're trying hard as HME to do is we want to be the easy button. And that means a lot of different things. But when you think about HME, we're sort of redeveloping the brand of what HME is. If you think about our roots, we go back to 1913, I believe it is, with Hendrickson motor. So way back the Hendrickson suspension. And we started building our own chassis in 1988. So we've been doing this for a long time. So when we say easy button, what we really mean by that is when we show up and we start to showcase what HME is about, we want it to be really easy to see the value. If you think about where HME has really cut its teeth, it's been in that wildland segment where we've got thousands of trucks in service in some of the most rugged and remote places of the United States. So we've kind of cut our teeth and vetted our product out there, which means we're really confident that when we back that truck into the apparatus bay in those municipalities, that we've been vetted out there, so we're good in here. So that's kind of the easy button we're doing. And there's also things that we associate with easy as far as easy to get parts. So we've got a strong dealer network. I was glad Dale could be a part of this call today to kind of talk through one of our dealers, Dingus, and how they work with customers. But what we want to do is work with that customer to say, hey, if you don't have local service, we've got dealers that can cover that. If you have local service, we'll set you up direct to do local service. Or if you are a fleet account and you want to do your own service, we can set you up as HME to do your own service. So we just want to be easy. And I use the analogy all the time. If I buy a pair of socks from Amazon and I wear them to the gym once and I don't like them, I basically go to the UPS store, send them back, and I get a credit, right? It'd be really hard for me to not buy socks from Amazon. I think that type of methodology needs to be brought to the fire service. So it makes it really easy for fire chiefs and fire truck committees to say yes to HME.
And I think, Chris, just kind of playing on that part a little bit, it's really pretty easy to do business with Dingus as well. As our footprint is in the Midwest, we have 180 employees that are out talking to customers every day. So you have access to a Dingus employee at all levels, which in this business, when you need something, we're only a phone call away and there's multiple stops to make that connection. So pretty excited about working with a company like HME that is easy to do business with. And we do the same thing within our business.
Yeah. And one other thing too on that, Chris, is, if you think about a lot of the stories that have been written in the Senate and the Congress about just the long lead time to get trucks and the escalation of truck pricing, I feel as HME, we've did a really great job over the last several years managing the business. And what I mean by that is great big backlogs are the norm, right? But what we tried to do is say no early and often to make sure that what was going through the facility were good, clean trucks that we wouldn't get backwards or get behind on. And that's a hard thing to have a conversation with we're a passionate industry. But saying no really just helped us manage the business to make sure we could keep our lead times around that 14 to 16 month timeline like it is today. Again, that goes back to the easy button, right? Like it's easy to see why our backlog is where it is. The other thing we do by managing the business is fire truck purchasers are buying those trucks in today's or real-time dollars, right? So when you're buying the truck from HME through our dealer partner like Dingus, you're seeing those dollars build that truck in real time. And there's a lot of drama out there in the channel right now with the EPA motors. As HME, we started a series called Fire Truck University. The first one we did was on EPA 2027 emissions engines because we wanted to get information out into the hands of purchasers to say, this is what it means for a 2027 emissions engine. If you can still get a motor that is not 2027 emissions, get it, right? Because there's a lot of things coming with the new motors. Dual aftermarket treatments take up a lot of space, so it's going to impact those custom cabs. It's going to impact wheelbases. There's a lot of impacts that those motors will do. So again, we're trying to make it really easy to get that education out there so people can make informed decisions.
And I think, Jeff brought up a lot of really good points here. I'd like to hit on two of them. As a dealership, we're still able to deliver current emissions engines on a build to orders process right now for another 8 months. And we still have stock units and multiple units ready to go. About like we're talking about in this podcast, they're available for almost immediate delivery. So again, where everyone's talking about 27 EPA engines, we're still on the old design for at least another 8 months, and that provides a lot of value to fire departments.
Now, you both touched on the current environment that we all find ourselves in right now when it comes to apparatus purchasing. If you had to summarize from both of your perspectives, if you had to summarize HME's view of the market today, what would it be?
How much time do we have? No, I think it's a great question. As somebody that's been doing this my whole adult life, so 25 years I've been in this industry. I've never seen it quite like this, and I think you've been doing this a long time too, Chris. And it just, this is unprecedented times. My view of it is, I kind of look at it this way. I feel the industry's somewhat been on cruise control because as we came out of the pandemic, there was a lot of government money, the ARP, American Recovery Plan money, and a lot of the budgets were pretty robust. So like as the increases of fire trucks were happening, I think the piggy banks were there to kind of support those increases. Now that the CARE money or the American Recovery money has sunset, and new budgets are not as robust as I think they were, I think that's why the reality is really sitting in with, well, wait a minute, we've got a problem here with these radical increases in costs. So I don't think we're on cruise control anymore. So how I see the industry progressing is over my 25-year span of working in the fire truck industry as well as being a firefighter, I've seen a transition of leaderships within fire departments where a lot of the fire chiefs and the leadership teams are coming in with no longer fire suppression degrees. It's more of a business management degree where now they're the CEO of this corporation that's called XYZ Fire Department. And I think that there's a creativity that comes within those new leadership styles that's always looking to see how can we be more effective and efficient. And as an example, when I look at like the current conditions as HME, we decided to invest at any one given time. We have 6 trucks with the SAM system on it. So it's a little bit of a radical out there for us, but we looked at it and said, I think this technology is game changing. How can we get it into the hands of fire departments faster, right? And the only way you can do that is to put it on your program or stock trucks. We've had great success with moving those trucks. As an example, we just delivered a Core 22 with an 1871 chassis with the SAM system to City of Midway, Florida. City of Midway has 14 firefighters. 7 to 10 of them are very active. So when you look at the remote area outside of Tallahassee, very few firefighters. The ability to charge your own line is game changing for them, right? So that's kind of what I see from the current economic and the current conditions of the market is you have to out ninja and out nimble the competition. And I think, again, with the stock truck program or program truck initiatives that are out there, it kind of level sets the market. Because if I'm a fire chief or I'm a fire truck committee looking to buy a new truck and I've said, hey, you know what, let's give a stock or a program truck a look. I can look at that truck or a type of truck like that from 7 different OEMs. And if there's a huge price spread amongst those 7 OEMs, I can associate value with to why, right? And kind of break that truck down into like 9 different components. And I always look at it and say you have driveline, you have powertrain, you have cab, you have electrical, fire suppression, body, accessories, warranty, and the dealer, right? Like those are in my mind the 9 things that kind of make up a fire truck. So if I do that and take those 9 aspects and I grade those 7 OEMs that are coming in promoting their product, it's really easy for me to see where the value is, right? Because I can look at warranties, I can look at type of construction, what type of materials, thicknesses, what's the cubic feet of storage, things that are really important to me on a fire truck, and I can really assess then what is the best value for my community. So that's kind of what I see happening in the market today.
Yeah, and I think Jeff brings up a lot of really good points. I mean, he talked about all the money that was available and these huge backlogs that have come up to over 4 years. But the reality is, yeah, those backlogs exist, but the fire departments today are realizing my equipment can't make it 4 years.
Right.
So what are we going to do in the short time? And the short time right now is buy a quality value priced unit that has all the features and benefits they want, like Jeff mentioned, these 9 core items. There's a few of them that are exactly the same, but there are a lot of things that differentiate some of these manufacturers that really pull us forward to say the stock units that we're offering and the short build time that we're still have available to us really make us a really good purchase to fill in the market when their equipment is failing.
Yeah, and Chris, just one other thing on that too that's super interesting is, so I got into the fire service in 1993. Had a wonderful chief by the name of Joel Hewitt, and he was a Brunocini guy and brought PAR and command, back up to Minnesota. So it's always been fun to be on the cutting edge of things that have very much revolutionized the fire service, in my opinion. I think back to 1993 when I got on the fire department. I had a 1977 Jeep CJ5, and it was basically a 3-speed because the first gear was granny gear, so it was basically useless. But when the tones would go off and we'd go racing to the fire station, the majority of pickups and Jeeps, they were manual transmissions, right? And it was very common back then on my department. We had these 2-door commercial chassis with these big phone booth looking things on the back that were called full response cabs. And we'd routinely have 6 and 8 firefighters on that truck out the door 3 minutes after the tone's going off, right? Like there was just a lot of people that were a part of that fire department community. As I travel across the United States and even up into Canada, the norm today is we have 1 to 3 people that get that first truck out. And it's several minutes before those other assets come on scene. So when I look at the market conditions today, it's not just getting apparatus in a timely manner at an economical value. It's how do we recruit and retain? And that's why I loved your bio. How do we bring new people into the fire service? And I think technology might be one of those things that gets people interested in maybe becoming a firefighter, because people don't drive manual transmissions anymore, right? People of the generation that we're trying to attract into the service, they're very comfortable with electronics. Like that's what they do. But the people speccing trucks, the people that are in charge of that process tend to be of the generation like me, where I stood on LDH hose to make sure that I wasn't trying to draft too much water, right? Like that, I'm a mechanical person. But I do appreciate what technology is bringing to the service, because I think that might be part of the key that brings new people in.
So when we talk about that approach and that view of the marketplace, the one thing that we think about are the current custom fire apparatus customers, and so like has it been difficult for you all to sort of transition some customers to the stock rig model that have traditionally been custom rig customers?
I think it's an interesting question, and it's a hard one to answer, because bless you, I feel that within this environment, there's still people that truly want to customize and build their truck from a piece of paper, right? And when I got into this industry, I recall, Salisbury is a name that I, would work with often. And, there were people that were so talented, they could design you the fire truck on a napkin, right? And it was almost to scale, so there's still people that I think that appreciate that aspect of what Apparatus is. I think a lot of that is tradition and history, where it's kind of like, hey, we've always kind of done this. It might be, we might not get paid for being a firefighter, so building trucks for us is kind of like, a thank you back. And I love that. I think that's a really important piece of our heritage and our history. I think there's a growing and a rapidly growing faction of fire leadership and even fire truck committees that are looking at it and saying, the truck we have currently, to Dale's point, is non-operational. It's non-dependable. Like, we have to figure out a way to get that truck out of service. What we've done as part of our core program is say, we can give you the majority of option content that you're looking for with a lot of customization, right? But instead of having the widget this big, it might be this big, right? So it might be a little bit bigger, it might be a little bit smaller, it might be a little bit brighter, it might be a little bit duller. But at the end of the day, I feel confident that within our core program, with the hundreds of options available, it gets really close to what a true custom build is. It's really just the fabrication that some departments require, because they're either trying to mimic a truck that they've had great luck with or success with. That's what we say no to. We found that that's not our wheelhouse. We're not good when we have to start, doing things on the floor. Where we're really good is we say yes and release that truck to the shop floor. That truck goes through squeaky clean. We've actually put a lot of checks and balances into place in our production to help those committees. I was just looking at a recent contract from a different vendor, a different company, and they had inspection trips. There are 5 trips, 5 people, 3 trips, and each trip was $2,500. So there was almost $40,000 in trips for that true custom build. Obviously, on a stock or a program truck, the need to go to the facility, we welcome it. We love to showcase our facility in Wyoming, Michigan, and our wonderful employees. And we have a lot of people that go through the facility. But because we've instituted things like weekly photo reports, and we also do on all of our core trucks, we do a true third-party inspection. So it's not our people looking at it. It's a third party who has a vested interest in making sure that truck is perfect when it arrives at the dealer location or the customer location. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, I think there's always going to be people that want to do that custom experience, and I think that's great. We've just kind of drawn a line in the sand and said, hey, that's just not our bailiwick. Where we're really going to be good is in this segment, which is having lots of options available and getting a really good truck at a great value fast.
And I think one of the pieces of the stock, back in the day, they heard stock, these units were stripped of options.
Yeah.
That's not the case today. There are so many options on these units that come stock off the line, pack track walls and all of the compartments, the availability of the SAM system. Again, and everyone wanting to build these custom units, that takes a large degree of time to do that. And as we mentioned, there's a lot of people leaving the fire service as far as being fire department, because everybody has so much time on their hands, and they're deciding to spend that with family and friends. And as that shortage becomes, I heard from somewhere just recently, 250,000 people, firefighters, have left the industry. So again, they don't have time to make all these visits to the factory, and that's a very premium piece. But if we can offer you 95% of what you were looking for, without all the hassle, there's a large savings in that, with time as well as the cost of the unit.
Yeah, the other thing we do, Chris, to sweeten the pot a little bit too, and kind of transitioning people from a true custom where they want to design it all versus, like Dale said, maybe an 80 to 90, 95 percentile of a comparable truck, is we sweeten the pot. We just do a 3-year standard bumper to bumper warranty. And on all of our core trucks, we just went all in on the stuff that matters. And that's really what core means to us. So like, for example, we galvanize all of our frame rails, cross members, and a lot of the components that make up the subframe. I'm shocked that I see people taking delivery of trucks in the Rust Belt that don't have some sort of galvanizing or rust preventative, where it's just, an old school black painted frame rail. We know mag chloride and the stuff, the icing agents that are put on the roadways, they're massively corrosive. And I know you know that where you're at. A lot of corrosion that happens. So like, we don't cut corners. We just said, hey, like, why would we not do that, right? Like, let's just put that in the infrastructure of our offering. So that's what you see a lot with the core. So when you start walking people through that and say, hey, like, this is kind of what you get with our core program, they're like, okay, I see the value in that. I'm getting the warranty. I'm getting all the best quality, high-performing components, and you're going to stand behind it through, dealers like Dingus. It's a no-brainer a lot of the times.
I think that's really interesting. When is the last time you heard, as standard on a fire truck, a 3-year warranty? And Jeff brings in the corrosion, especially in, again, I mentioned the Midwest.
Yeah.
As a dealer in the Midwest, being offered the galvanized frame rails standard throughout, and a completely bolted stainless body with the corrosion protection that these departments are looking for, these are huge advantages to fire departments for longevity and cost of ownership throughout.
Now, when you talk about the core program, and it kind of goes a little bit back to the question about the customization, a lot of people don't realize that there are still, you mentioned it, but there are options that you can choose to use. There are options that you can choose not to use.
That's right.
So to what extent does HME offer options on those core program trucks? Because sometimes in the end, somebody might just want to be able to say, I can control some part.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's fair. It's funny when you look at what a program truck is or was. I look at it. Oftentimes it was filler. So like, you'd have an open slot and you didn't want that slot to go through. So it's like, well, we'll just put a filler truck in there, which is a stock or a program or a demo, right? It used to be called a lot back in the day. I think how we look at the core program is that's a great percentage of our business. So like, we purposefully put core trucks into the schedule. And the advantage that gives us is I can work with a customer that says, hey, I really want this light bar, right? Like it's the newest and greatest light bar. We believe in it, but I might have a core truck that's almost offline that doesn't have that light bar. So I can pick a core truck that hasn't had components purchased for it yet, get them that light bar that they're looking for that meets that need, and then that truck goes through very smoothly. We also have the ability to pull stuff off after the fact and then bolt on components that might meet that intent of their customization after the truck comes offline. We prefer to not do that because I think it's somewhat wasteful when we're pulling components off. You've got the labor associated with reinstall. Because we can put trucks through so fast within our core program, though, the majority of things that customers would come to us and say, hey, we want the widget this way, we would just identify a truck somewhere in the line and say, hey, we can pick that one there. We can match the 100% of the content you're looking for. And guess what? You're going to have that truck in 3 months because it's already here through the production. That's kind of how we look at the core program and how we kind of meet the needs of somebody that says, I kind of want my fingerprints on it to kind of make it more mine or more our flavor of our department. That's how we meet that need very easily.
And what's really interesting is Jeff talks about the core program and not having all the options. We just had a unit come offline, all the popular blacked out options that came off. We knew the options these customers are looking for and worked closely with the HME to make sure we can provide those. That truck sold almost immediately, and we have several other units back in the backlog already pre-programmed so we can sell a similar unit to other customers looking for the same piece. So again, a lot of really good options available that other folks don't quite think are there in the core program. So it's pretty exciting to see some popular options already existing.
Yeah, and as a true 80-20 nerd, which I self-proclaimed, if you look at most fire trucks, 80% of the components I've always felt are very similar in nature. And those are your long lead time components that are usually not people aren't interested in changing those out typically. So if it's a long lead time, a power plant, axles, transmissions, people don't routinely look to change those things. I feel it's that 20% of customization that often makes up 80% of the costs, right? Because you're kind of doing it your way. We have a lot of flexibility in that. It's just we want to make sure that we are giving them the best value by picking those trucks along the line to make that customization happen as most economical way possible.
And Jeff talks about the nine pieces, and one of them I'd like to touch on is the cab. The availability to have single piece, three wipers across the windshield glass, the availability. I look at the quality of the cab itself, 3/16 aluminum, and let's look at some really simple things like the hinges on the doors. The hinges on the size and how they're finished at HME is truly impressive. And I think it's okay for someone to really take a look and compare that quality to what's out there in the market. Those are the differentiators that really make a difference in purchasing something.
And I go back to, cutting our teeth in that wildland segment, when you've got doors that are not durable and you're, remote Idaho or remote California, that's why we just went all in and just let's do it right the first time, right? Like let's make sure the durability's there, the quality's there. We're not in the part sales business. We have a great parts department, but our livelihood is fire trucks, right? Making sure that we build the highest quality, the most durable, and the safest trucks possible. And like there's a good example of it right there that I see on the screen.
And I think Jeff and HME back that statement with a 3-year warranty.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is just one example that I threw up there of an HME rig. There are other models that you can choose from, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the dealers, where they are in this whole process, and how much input HME's dealers have in the designs of these stock rigs, especially for their particular area.
Yeah, and I can frame it up, and that's why, again, I was so appreciative of the fact that Dale could be here today. Going back to managing the business, Chris, we've kind of looked at it and said, in our mind, we've got a number of trucks that we feel we can push through the facility, in those quality manners that we talked about. And what we do then is we say, okay, if we've got X amount of trucks, how do we sell those? Like, what's the distribution model? My whole career has been in channel management. What I really appreciate about the HME dealer partners we have is a lot of them are longevity or long-term dealers that have been doing this a long time. But what's nice about it is they're partnering with us, right? They're not coming to us with toxicity of orders that might get us sideways. Like, it's a true partnership. That said, we've got some areas of the country where we don't have dealer representation just because we don't have the capacity to scale further, right? So what we do is we look at those on a case-by-case basis. As director of national sales, I take those leads on a one-off basis. I contact those departments, explain to them about core, and then going back to that easy button, a lot of times we'll just set them up factory direct. In the case of Midway, they've got a Freightliner dealer that is literally a mile away from the station, and I met with that Freightliner dealer. I set them up to be factory direct service for their HME truck, and everybody's happy. That's kind of how we look at distribution, but we also have a growing, or I should say the dealers that we have are growing and investing, and I think Dingus is a good example of that. And Dale, maybe you want to talk just a little bit about how Dingus Fire looks at distribution.
Yeah, so like Jeff mentioned, being part of a great organization like HME, Nick Dingus and I just spent 3 solid days at the factory collaborating with engineers, management, and everything at HME to talk about the concerns that our customer have and what the needs that they have in the market. So again, we can get the core units on the line and we can describe the things that we need and the other additional units that we're going to continue to order and fill those slots within the line for the quick piece. And when we look at all of our distribution, what we want to do is be able to provide the best service of parts and the unit with something that works within the fire department's budget and make it, again, easy to do business with us, just like it's easy to do business with HME.
Yeah. And the dealer body, what a lot of people, I think, Chris, don't realize that an important aspect of the dealer is they're really in the trenches, like the market trends, new options, new light bars. The dealers get that first, right? Because the customer sees it on an advertisement and they get in touch with the dealer. So we do work really closely with our dealer partners because again, they're all over America today. There's HME dealers sitting in firehouses as we're doing this podcast, talking to them about widgets, right? Like, did you see this at FDIC? Yeah, that's really great. And that kind of allows us then to, hey, if we hear that a lot, we want to look into that. We get engineering to contact and purchasing to contact those vendors, bring them in and say, hey, this seems like it's a really great widget or component. Can you tell us more about it? How could we integrate that into our product line? That's why core it's an ever growing program, right? It's not like we hit core and said, okay, we're at the top of Everest. Like, where else do we go? Like, core is always changing, always evolving, always pivoting. Some options go out because they're no longer available, and maybe 3 more options come in, right? Like, that's just the nature, I think, of program trucks in general.
Well, Dale and Jeff, I want to thank you again for sitting down with me today. But before I let you go, do you have any general comments about HME's stock program or just stock rigs in general?
Well, I just would say, if the viewers out there haven't caught it yet, the first episode of Fire Truck University on those EPA engines posted a couple weeks ago. I'd encourage them to go, check that out. And I think really, again, Chris, what we're trying to do is we're just looking for a shot to show people what HME is all about. And I think our core program is one of the best ways that we can do that. So we just welcome those opportunities to, meet new folks in the market for fire trucks and show them what we're all about.
Yeah, and I would like to just point out that any fire department that's interested in taking a visit to HME, please reach out personally to myself or Jeff, and we will set up a visit to come out and see what HME is all about, and they'll be very impressed with what they're seeing.
And that website is www.firetrucks.com.
It's a great one to have.
All right, guys. Well, again, my thanks to you for sitting down with me today to do a deeper dive into HME's stock program. If anyone wants to view any of our archive podcasts, they are available at www.fireapparatusmagazine.com/podcast. So again, this has been Chris Mc Loone with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Have a good one and stay safe. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you to our sponsors.